So thank you everyone for joining us for this roundtable. I think it's quite promising seeing this very nice panel we have with us today. So this roundtable will be about why you should pay for free software, and I have a few reasons in my head, but I think we'll learn a lot more good reason from our panel, and I will hand over the mic to Michael Meeks to introduce the panel today.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for coming. Look at you wonderful people. Hopefully you're all here to pay for free software, and you just need that little persuasion. But let's face it, there are some free things that don't seem to need paying for. That set perhaps a bad example, you know, the Chromes and the Firefoxes of the world, these 1,000-person teams of people paid entirely by debauching your privacy. Or OpenSSL, you know, another famous, you know, 3 volunteers having fun. So we're not really going to look at those very much. Perhaps donation-funded Blender situations that seem to do just fine. But we're going to really look at corporate, you know, enterprise software here that perhaps is slightly less sexy. And what I'd like to do is introduce, or have these guys introduce themselves just quickly. So who are you? Do you make open source stuff or not open source stuff, or some mix? How big is your company? What's the balance of your company, and how much do you earn from consultancy, subscriptions, SaaS perhaps? How many staff? How profitable are you? That sort of thing. Over to Frank. Frank.
Yeah, it's always great to speak after Michael. I cannot match his enthusiasm. So, yeah, I'm Frank Karlitschek, founder and CEO of Nextcloud. Nextcloud is a software company. We are 125 people at the moment. We are completely self-funded, so this means we have to be profitable. But Nextcloud is not only done by the company, we also have a community which are non-paid, so it's basically a combination of paid and non-paid. I started my open source career in KDE and other projects which are completely unpaid communities, where everybody just does it for fun. But over time I realized it's also like beneficial to mix this together with full-time people that actually paid for their work. And for that you need a company, and for that you need a business model, and for that you need to have customers. So at the end, to produce like wonderful software, you need some income there. Of course, the question is, where does it come from? From my perspective, we should take the money from the rich, big corporations and governments, and then provide it like for free for everybody else. So this is what we try to do.
Hello, my name is Amandine Lepape. I'm COO and co-founder of Element. We do secure decentralized communication built on top of Matrix, an open source project, which is trying to provide an open communication layer to the web. So I also co-founded Matrix. So Matrix is handled by a non-profit foundation, but Element is a for-profit corporation. We do open source software, but we also have some proprietary products around it as well. We started very liberal licensed with lots of Apache and available to everyone, and it has cost us a lot. We're 85 people. We were 125 at peak. No, even more actually. We're selling mostly to government, which is quite an interesting exercise. I'm not sure I recommend it. What else did you want to know? We're funded by venture capitalist money. So we don't necessarily need to be profitable, although at some point you still do need to be profitable.
My name is Anais. I'm co-CEO at Grist. Grist is a collaborative spreadsheet that has all the benefits of collaborating in the cloud, but protects user data. You can self-host it, and it has a no-code app builder on top of that. And so Grist, we're currently 11 people. For most of Grist, it was being developed, and in 2020 had a SaaS offering, and it wasn't until this year that we started really pushing enterprise sales. So that's really changed the customer profile in terms of who pays. So it was small and medium businesses and individuals for a long time. Now we're pushing into much larger organizations. And not yet profitable. And were there any other questions?
Yeah. But we'll get to those.
Okay.
Hello, I'm Philippe, the founder of Arawa. Arawa is a company different because we are a IT service company, consulting, deployment, development, support, maintenance, hosting. We are partner of Nextcloud and Collabora, and we are 14 people working many with public organization often, but also private companies. And same question. What else?
Good question. So I guess I'm kind of moderating, but also Collabora is kind of partnering with many of these people and has 50 staff, something like that, and primarily a subscription company, a bit like Frank outlined. But let's have a quick fire round, just a few quick fire questions here. So full open source, everything is open, or some bits proprietary, the proprietary periphery around the edge that they call open core, because they like to market the open bit, which is good, but so are you fully open or open core?
Fully open.
We don't like to call ourselves open core because it has a bad vibe of you cripple the core, which is not true. We don't cripple it. We just make the value add valuable to enterprise and government proprietary.
Similar, except we say open core, and even though most of it, 95% is open source.
We prefer open source. All what we develop is open source, but we are working with some open core software also.
Okay, another quick question. How's your revenue breakdown between consultancy, or what we call professional services, and then subscription revenue, or maybe even SaaS? So if you have those three buckets. So at least for us, it's like 75% subscription, no SaaS, and 25% professional service.
So no SaaS, so 0%. Consultancy was also 0%. Subscription was 100%. Now we're doing one project with the German government that we really had to do, so we have to do a little bit of consultancy, but I think it's really a bad idea. I think we should do 100% subscription, ideally.
We have a SaaS platform, but it's tiny. We do 40% subscription. We don't do a lot of consulting, but we do recurring services like roadmap funding. We've been doing quite a lot of it, but trying to decrease. Subscription is definitely where we're trying to head to.
So we do both. We try to package the consultancy with subscription, though if some people give us puppy eyes, we might make an exception. And it's both the SaaS and also for self-hosters who subscribe to the very small and few premium features.
Consultancy represent 40%, about 40%, and recurring revenues 60%, SaaS and subscription.
So hopefully quite a diverse set of places there, going places. Silly quick fire question. Open source or free software?
I don't care.
I'm not very religious about it, neither.
Yeah, I didn't fully understand the debate.
Another question. Okay,
I don't mind.
and we can say, hello, Richard Stallman. So there we are. Excellent. Brilliant. So why not hire and train an internal team? Why should we, pay to get your services? I mean, surely it's cheaper to hire and motivate and train and sustain an internal team, and then we can be independent and noble and stuff.
I think software is complex, and building up a team that is as knowledgeable as the core team who wrote the software in the first place is very hard. So I think you can hire a cheap developer somewhere who is patching around something, but truly maintaining the software I think you need to work with the core team.
The thing is, it depends if you're building an open source project or product. If you are building a product, you need experts, you need a roadmap, you need professional design, professional architecture of your product. And it's excellent when people actually contribute to it, but then you need to merge the contribution. So it needs a core team who can actually review everything, make sure it's at the development level, the standards of development you're expecting from your own developers. And it's the things they're bringing in are not necessarily urgent and aligned with your roadmap, so it makes it more complicated. So support the core project and bring some of the external contribution is good, but supporting the core project, if you want a strong, professionally designed and professionally running product, is key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would echo both of that, and I would add two things. One, it's a lot of times the external contributions are developers, and and then you have this product and design bottleneck. You still want the product to be high quality, to serve different kinds of users. So then you have fewer and fewer people who can guide the design and the product management, which also means that if you have less control over the composition of the teams of the contribution, you just have less say in what they're doing, and also if depending on how they're funded, it could disappear tomorrow, right? If they're funded by a charity, if they're funded by the government, and their priorities change. So that's a big risk as well as a company.
Maybe I have a different answer because of the nature of our company, but our clients are often public organizations. They have heavy pressure on salaries, so there is not enough people to often to build projects. So they need experts to build the platform, and then it's very important to train the people so that they can run the platform.
So that's interesting in terms of keeping skills. There's a couple of things that came out of that. I think roadmap was one thing. So one of the questions I have here is what do you get when you pay for an open source product? Now, some people here have open core or proprietary. There's some way of saying it's not open core. Fair enough. But for the more pure play things, presumably there's value, and then roadmap is part of that. I mean, Amandine, can you explain why you might want to pay to have insight into roadmaps and so on?
I guess the roadmap angle is more from a product builder perspective, where you are trying to build your product so it fits specific use cases and do things in a specific order and have some maintenance and some bug fixing on existing feature rather than just new features. So then there is different value add that you can pay for rather than just the roadmap and the professionally built product.
And so we talk about maintenance there, but software is not like roads, surely. I mean, like it doesn't decay by itself, does it? Or does it? I mean, like, why would you even need maintenance? That seems crazy. Like, do you want to take that, Anais? Or, like,
sure. I mean, if your code's completely bug-free and you don't want to keep up with the changing technology, and the technology is changing around it, other technology comes up that people want to integrate with. There's all kinds of different meanings around what maintenance is. Maintaining security, so maybe a little bit like roads, not so much, the environment around it is changing, you want to keep up and you want to keep the product fresh.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you might think that software that is great today must be still great in 10 years, right? Because it's not a road. But in a way, it is a bit a road because, first of all, software has dependencies. So we're not building something in vacuum. So it has dependencies. And the dependencies needs to be updated. New technologies, programming languages evolve and so on. It actually needs maintenance. But I think the most important part is probably security. Because every software has security problems and they need to be fixed over time. And if you have a software that doesn't get any security fixes for 10 years, then it's basically unusable. So, it needs ongoing maintenance.
I would say it's even worse than the road. It decays much more quicker.
Cool. So in terms of consultancy and subscriptions and so on, I know Frank is a 0% consultancy, a lover, and I think many of us would like to be there. But what's the balance there between roadmap and consultancy? And do you have any stories about people wanting things on roadmaps and other people wanting to pay for them? And like how does that work out? And do you sell? I mean, I think Anais, you mentioned you would sell consultancy to people who didn't buy the product. Is that? I mean, I don't know if that's a good example. You said that. Is that something that's normal or?
So it depends. So I'll start with the roadmap. So if somebody wants to pay to help prioritize something on the roadmap that we would have liked to build anyway, that's a good aligning of incentives for us, especially if it's something that benefits the open source community more broadly or brings in more of the community. So a good example of that would be a couple years ago, the French government was adopting Grist. It was only in English at the time. They needed to have it localized into French. So they just paid us to build the infrastructure to make that possible. And then from there, the community came out, and now Grist is available in 20 languages, all volunteer translators from the community. So that's a way where, if they hadn't paid, it might not have made sense for us because we don't have, at that time, we didn't have a lot of users who weren't English speakers. so that made sense for us. Similarly, other product features that we know we would make open source, we would never put as a proprietary code, then you can go ahead and prioritize that. As for consultancy, because of the nature of Grist, it could be either in installing Grist on your own infrastructure that you need help, or building apps within Grist. So there's different levels of consultancy, and that part of it we do try to tie to subscriptions.
Yes, on our side, that would be a bit the same, like deploy, do some specific integrations, but we really don't like to do custom work. Same thing in terms of aligning with the roadmap. The interesting bit is when governments want to pay for something which you want to do, except you wanted to make it proprietary, because that's something that only government will want to use. So you don't want to make it, like it makes no sense to make it open source and available to everyone. And then you get into licensing issues, etc. So that can be quite tricky. But the problem with roadmap funding, was immensely useful when you're trying to fund your dev team, is the amount of negotiation. And yeah, it's very much like, what do you want, how much it is, etc., etc. And then, so who is maintaining this feature you've just paid us to develop?
Yeah, maybe it's worth to go a little bit more into detail, because I don't know if everybody really understands like the differences there. So I mean, consulting or roadmap sponsoring basically means you get like money for code that you write. And the problem is, if you want to grow as a business, let's say you want to double next year, and you do consulting or roadmap sponsoring, then you need to have also write double the code next year to get double the revenue. And this is like a bad business model, because this will just stop scaling at some point. Yeah. And if you look at the opposite idea, like licenses, like Microsoft, I mean, the idea of Microsoft is, of course, software is written once, and it's just licensed to more people. And every new license costs them zero. It's just like a key or something in a database. So this makes them the most profitable company in the world, right? You boost the work once and sell it like infinite times. And in open source, we try to do, of course, something similar, but we can't, because it's free software, right? So the subscription business basically means you buy some kind of subscription, and you get a bundle of things, services around it that also scales, but they're not really tied to actual work. Like, for example, having the way to open a support ticket, and then you also have the support ticket, and this costs some money. But if you have a bigger contract, doesn't mean that you have double the support tickets, right? And this is why this is a good idea in the first place. And with the consultancy, the problem is, when we started with Nextcloud, we had the same thing, that some big customers coming and say, hey, we want to have these features. And I think we even had a customer together at some point with this problem. That the conversation are always like, hey, Nextcloud is great, there's just this tiny thing missing. It's always like that. There's always something missing. Right? And then you say, okay, no problem, we just develop this for you and just pay some money. And if this is done, then you go into production. And then the problem is like this goes on forever, because is it perfect? And another thing. And we had this one incident where this went on for like over a year, I don't know, before the tiny roadmap sponsoring was really done. And this delayed the actual subscription business and delayed the actual business model. And now we changed it completely and say we don't do this anymore. If someone comes to us and say Nextcloud is great, there's just a tiny bit missing, we say like, no problem, buy the subscription today. We promise to develop it for free for you in the next, whatever, 3 months. If we don't do it well, then you have the right to cancel the contract, you get your money back, but the subscription starts immediately. So we're not in this time and material and like sign off and is this feature now perfect or not mode, which is really, really problematic. Period.
Yeah, that's something we do. I think one of the key things is also that if we wanted to build a consultancy business, we would have, right? We're here because we want to build open source software and build products. We're not here to sell developers with a tiny margin on top. We just want to build products. That's what we're like.
So Philippe, I think you might have a different perspective, because Philippe, you have more of an integrator, partnering business that resells and also develops software. So what's your take on that?
Yes, yes. And one of our products was created because there was something missing in Nextcloud. It was for a ministry, and we created the software for that, and as a consultancy mission. And now we are maintaining it, and we are trying to transform the business model into subscription also. But it's completely open source, so many customers are not paying. And we are still consultancy, development, on the product, and we are okay with that. But trying to transform that into recurring revenues as much as possible.
Yeah, makes sense. I think there are a number of really interesting things there. I think so. It perhaps is not clear. We run a product company in Collabora Productivity, but our parent company is a 150-person pure play open source consultancy, which gives you a very interesting perspective into what happens if you scale a consultancy. And I think the picture is it's like driving in fog, a consultancy. You drive a truck or a bus full of people in the fog, and you can get bigger and drive faster, but you don't necessarily see any further ahead. And it's a bit of a tricky business model. But the real dream of the consultant is to have 3 customers all wanting the same functionality and signing a fixed price contract with you all for the same functionality. And one of the great joys of product development is that you effectively have that. You have 20 customers with a subscription, and 8 of them have the same problem, and you can fix it for them, and they're all happy. And you can tell them, you did it, we did it for you. Okay, only an 1/8 of you, but we did it for you, right? And this is just a very much better, I find that interaction just much more brilliant. So perhaps one of the most interesting things Amandine said was, we get people to fund us to pay for things that would be on our roadmap anyway. So the interactions I have with customers are very much like, tell us what's on your roadmap, because those are the things we won't pay for. And I'm just wondering how you square that circle. It sounds clever.
Basically, they say, "Oh, we want to use you. We want to actually support the company because we like Elements and we like Matrix and we want to give you some money, but we cannot pay for subscription." Governments have a big line of going straight to Microsoft with lots of subscription, but bizarrely, no existing framework has a subscription line for open source software, or even smaller company, I think. So they're like, okay, they're trying to help, and then they say, okay, well, in that case, you might be able to fund some features that you feel are missing in the product. So that's because that's the only thing they can buy. They can buy potentially support, often by the ticket, and otherwise is development, feature development, and that's all that they can buy. So basically it's either we get some revenue to support the project and the company, or we don't, and they just use the open source like this. And it's a kind of compromise.
I'd say we'd have 2 categories. So one would just be timing. It's on the roadmap, but they need it now for a very important use case. It's critical to what they're doing, so they're willing to pay us to do it now, because it's clear to them that we have no reason to do it now. And the other one would just be convenience. Depending on the price, maybe a little bit of luck, getting the right customer, they just would make my life a lot easier if I could do it this way instead of the way that's already possible, and they're sometimes willing to pay a bit for that as well.
I find it really interesting. It's like in the proprietary world, if you go to Oracle or to Microsoft, it's very easy. You pay by the license, then you get the software. You don't buy the license, you don't get the software. And the whole world understands this. If you want to have a car, you can pay for the car and you get a car. If you don't pay for the car, you don't get a car. It's very easy. But it's open source, like these customers all have their own ideas. No, we want to pay for development. We want to pay for support tickets. We want to pay for repo sponsoring and whatever. And this is so annoying because it's like, no, I mean, we all have business models and you cannot just pick and choose what you want. And sometimes fighting this like procurement people who have their own ideas. And this is really, really annoying. To tell you a bit of a fun story at some point is there seems to be this kind of rule in the procurement world that in software you pay like 2/3 of the money for the license and 1/3 of the money for the support of the software. Some kind of golden rule, I don't know, seems to exist somewhere. But it's open source, you don't pay for the license. The license is 0, 100% is support. And we had a customer once, a really big one, who was like, no, this is not us. My mind is exploding. It cannot do. How should I pay 100% for support for something that's free? That's like really not. This finance people didn't really get it. And at the end, it's really crazy. We sold them HGPL soft for a lot of money. They got a contract, I got an offer and a contract, And they really bought AGPL software for a lot of money and the support for half of that. So it's still like 2/3, 1/3. So they paid for something that's free. I mean, the AGPL doesn't really say that it's free, right? From a money perspective, it's de facto free because it's available. But they said, no, just we pay like whatever, 6-figure money for AGPL software, and additionally, like a little bit less for the support as one package, just to make them happy. So just adapt us to their thinking. This is really weird because, as I said, if you buy a car, it's pretty clear how it works, and it's open source. They have these weird ideas. Yeah.
So this is very interesting, the car metaphor. So in terms of the product, why should people pay for your product? What are those ingredients in there? So we've come up with a roadmap. We've talked about perhaps being able to see the roadmap. I don't know if your roadmaps are public. But what other pieces? What is the value that people pay for in your subscriptions? Maybe go from Philippe and then come back to me.
Yeah, maybe. I think they are paying for experts, obviously. They need someone to build robust and scalable. But more than that, they want people that who contribute to project also. They want not only people that earn money and consume free software. They want people who do more, who contribute, who are participating in the virtuous circle of open source project. And so maybe they are paying for something and have more than the payment, something that consolidate the product and their project.
So with Open Core, they'll be paying for, we try to sell their proprietary enterprise features. So for example, auditing that an enterprise might care more about. They want to see user actions, who's accessed what data, but also expertise. There is documentation. Good luck, you can go out there, and we have tried to make that a lot easier, but even so, everyone has different infrastructure, different requirements, and sometimes you just want access to our engineers, so that's something that we can sell. And like I said, also using the tool itself, expertise in getting something off of the ground very quickly.
Yeah, on our side, our rule of thumb is basically anything that can be used by anyone and enable the matrix network to grow and anyone to communicate should be free. If it's a feature that first breaks end-to-end encryption, like audit, for example, or content scanning and this sort of things, it will be proprietary, and anything that helps the deployment and the scalability of the platform. So the nice visual interface for the administration of the server and these sort of things. And there are two important things. First, long-term support. Then you get support on a version which is up to, I think, 1 year old, and advanced security notice as well, which are done to our customers.
So as I said at the beginning, we want to charge the big, rich organizations and governments, but not everybody else. So this is why we also identified these enterprise things for the subscription by only things that are relevant for these really big, huge organizations. So classic way is scalability, but because we're not open core, we don't really do that. But there are other things. First of all, there is the support by the engineers, and these very big organizations, for example, they often need 24/7 support. So we can provide a phone line where you get a core developer on the phone in the middle of the night. This is something big organizations want. No one else really needs that, right? No normal user needs that. So this is a great feature that is part of the subscription for the big customers. Another example is we are BitV certified. That's an accessibility certification. That's a certification that your software is accessible. And this is something no normal user really cares if they have this document or not. Doesn't make a difference, right? The software is the same anyway. So it is accessible. Also the community, everything is accessible, but you don't have the formal document. The formal document we just give to our customers. You cannot really download it on the community. So, and these big organizations, governments, say like, we can only use software where I have this document here that I can sign to the compliance office, like, we have this document. And the document is just like for paying customers. So you have stuff like that. So we don't really compromise the usability and then for normal users, we We just identify things that is big organizations need.
Yeah, so of course Collabora has 3 years of long-term support and SLAs, obviously, with all sorts of clever terms in them. But indemnity, I think, is one of those things. You know, we stand behind our product. It is created by us, and we're good for it. You know, if someone attacks you, we will stand in and help you. And I guess then there's that sort of brand trust, and maybe even the CRA is coming along to make it necessary to have a supported piece of software in many circumstances. So say I have saved all my money and I have not bought, and I've deployed the community stuff, and I've managed to work around the proprietary pieces that would have made it easier for me and avoided supporting the product by doing that. And now I suddenly really need support. Can you talk about some of the experiences of how long is your sales cycle and your buying cycle typically? How long does it take, and tendering, and, you know, say I need support as a big entity tomorrow for this. How am I going to get that? Is that something that's easy?
Philippe. Thank you. I don't know. Yeah, it takes time. It may be very long. And I think the tender process is a good one, and it would be better if it was more used, but it takes time. And so there is some way to do in another way. It's expensive. So I don't know. We have to be patient.
What Frank was talking about earlier, where people come with their own ideas of what to sell, that's very expensive. People coming, trying to pitch you on something. So I have a story along that lines of someone who, very big organization, you know, billions in assets, and within a couple months they had hundreds of users. They had deployed for their infrastructure. They had a working use case. Very technical person. He felt bad, so he spoke to us about, what's your enterprise self-managed plan? How much does that cost? I gave him the price, and, you know, a lot less than you would pay for Microsoft or Google, and he was like, I don't want to go through my procurement process, basically. So then, because there was a certain amount he could approve on his own without procurement, and then there's amount above that, right? So you start to play that game also with enterprises of, like, who you're talking to, your champion, what can they approve? So he's like, okay, so that was expensive to get nothing on our end, right? But then you had a big problem. He needed urgent support. Someone messed something up, and he didn't know how to restore things. He hadn't set something up correctly because he hadn't bought support in the beginning, so he had lost something. And it was like, can I buy support from you now ongoing? But once again, setting his own price, which is really interesting. And now they are buying support because he had that moment of panic that could have been avoided had he paid for it in the beginning and everything had been set up correctly. And so it did take that panic moment, but it wouldn't be a one and done. It has to be a subscription, right? But even then, nothing would stop them after a year from canceling, right? So we do it on a year basis, or maybe 2 or 3, depending on the enterprise. It's still a bit risky. You see this on our SaaS. It's the SaaS. The SaaS is really for smaller organizations, individuals to use Grist, but, you know, sometimes people want support, so they'll go to the paid plan, get the 30-day trial, solve all their problems, and cancel before they ever get charged. And it's okay. It's like an individual, so that's not something we're chasing. But that behavior, that thinking does extend into enterprises, and you have to be aware of it.
Yeah, on our side, so there are 2 things. There is the technical bit where basically today the open source is just a server, but the idea is to start working on an open source package so that it's easy to onboard into the properly supported paid package. We may do some short-term help, but there is often negotiation. Like, I can approve this to that level amount of budget, I can approve, and otherwise go via tenders, which takes a lot of time. Often have to work with partners, Prime, who can front you, or go via someone else, like they already have a contract with a big company like an IBM or Deutsche Telekom or whatever, so you have to contract with this company, and then you can go bypass the tender, and then they just get like 15-20% just for providing a paper. So sales cycle overall can be very long. We can have a short-term money as a one-off thing, proof of concept or something, but it's like could be definitely at least a year easily in some places.
Yeah, so the sales process, sales cycle can be quite complex and unusual. It's like when we hire a new salesperson on our side and they don't come from the open source world, they're often quite surprised how things are working on our side. So first of all, we have tons of incoming requests. If you're just if you're a normal proprietary software company somewhere, then most people don't really know you. And if you get one request a week, you're like, oh, it's awesome. There's someone interested in buying us. Let's jump on it. We get like over 100 per day. So and this is because we are like well known as an open source project. So then the first thing a salesperson realizes, oh, there are so many requests. Great. Second thing they notice is that the quality is low of these requests. Because we have like requests from, I don't know, a bakery from Japan, or I don't know, like someone who is not really a proper customer for us. But they know us and they like us, and also lots of them assume that we must be very, very cheap because open source is for free. So obviously working with us as a company must be also very, very cheap. But well, we pay proper salaries, which means that we also need to charge proper things to the customers, right? So we're not cheap. This is the other thing they're surprised. And next thing they're surprised is in normal sales conversations, you need to convince them that your product is good. In our case, like all the people that come to us already know our product. They already like it. They already use it, lots just for free. And just they reach the point where they think they want to have professional support. So what we're selling, what we're selling is not really the product because they already like it and use it. We're selling our services around it. And it's another thing that's unusual. So yeah, some unusual things in selling open source.
Cool. I think one of the interesting things is tendering, so selling to governments. And again, I think this product mix-up is something. It's very easy to think you're buying a product, and of course, other people can sell your product in tenders. I don't know if anyone has particularly exciting stories there.
Ours in front of you? Yeah, definitely. Like your open source product is your main competitor. And when you go to tenders, some tenders are looking for quality, and basically usually they have some kind of formula saying this is X point per question and box you check, and then you have a complicated formula where either the quality of the product and the team behind it is high or the price is high. And we're doing a lot of tenders in the healthcare market in Germany as right now. And some customers are looking for the quality and say, well, we created the whole thing, so we are the expert. If you really need the people who know how to run servers with millions of users on it, well, there is only one company who can do that, and it's us. And then other ones are like, oh, we just want the cheapest as possible. And you have a 5-person startup in Germany who just took the open source thing and competing with us and winning the tender. And I'm looking forward to see what will happen when they actually have millions of users on their server. Good luck to them.
Yeah, so Grist has inspired quite a few companies to sell services around Grist, which is a great sign for us. It means other people are seeing the value there and they're seeing how they can apply it. And depending on what you want to do, we actually may or may not be the expert. If it's about deploying at scale, multiple servers, then yes, probably we are the expert. But if what you really care about is a very specific use case, if you're in the insurance industry, we have a solution person who's like an expert there in InsurTech, or if you're working with governments and you know how governments work, then if that's what's more important, Grist is a general purpose tool, so how you use it, there's different specialists in how you use it. But I actually see that as an opportunity, which is, okay, they're going to evangelize for us. In fact, one of them recently hired their own Grist salesperson, so that's cool. There's another Grist salesperson who we're not paying for. But we're not getting most of the revenue from any sales if that person is successful. So what that tells me is that I need to figure out what are the industries that are doing well, because there's other solution providers out there selling Grist, and then what do their enterprise customers need that I can build for them and make that part proprietary. That's the only thing I can do. That's the only lever I have as the developer.
Exciting proprietary fight back on the open source core. Yeah, I mean, so at least in the LibreOffice community I've been a member of for a long time, we've had people winning contracts against us that are totally unable to support the software and then file it with the community, and then well-meaning paid employees of mine go, oh, that's an interesting bug, and fix it for free, which, yeah, I don't know if anyone can identify with that, but, everyone wants to make the software better, and I think that I'd like to leave some time for questions quickly, but one of the things that hopefully persuaded you is that you should pay for free software, and so I just then like to ask you, where does that money go? And certainly in our case, we invest almost all of it back into creating more awesome free software. Of course, we keep some evil profit to balance our payments. You know, if people are not paying, it's nice to have some cash in the bank, you know, if that's delayed and so on. But broadly, it goes to improve the software. So where does the money go, Frank?
Yeah, I mean, we're in the lucky situation that we don't have any investors or shareholders or anything, so we're independent. So 100% is reinvested in the company, which is then, mostly development. Some degree also marketing and sales that some people might consider stupid and useless. It's not stupid and useless, it's also useful. But yeah, 100% stays in Nextcloud and make Nextcloud better.
Yeah, for us, well, we're not profitable right now, so any money that comes in is dutifully used to actually pay people and the bills. But we, at some point, we did have, and we'd love to have some more R&D on next generation projects, like, because Matrix is very, you can do anything on top of it, and we were doing really fun things on top of it, and we would like to accelerate it faster, so we'd love to reinvest as many profit as we could in there once we're profitable.
Yeah, exactly. We have spreadsheets are a deep product. There's a lot of innovative, cool things that we'd like to do. And currently, bootstrapped, single investors, the founder. So if we can solve the revenue issue, become profitable without having other investors, then we have complete freedom in being able to reinvest that in innovative ways.
Yeah, we are profitable, and all the profit is reinvested into the company, R&D, and hiring new colleagues.
Yeah, so you can see there's some pretty sharp business people here, but their heart is in the right place, you know? They want to grow their products and change the world for the better. So I think, depending on which clock you believe, we have 4 minutes for questions. So thank you to the panel. Brilliant to have you. And does anyone have a question or some heckling or some stone throwing or, you know, anything? Who is brave? Is there a brave person here? No, everyone is scared. Oh, excellent. We need let me dive to you with the microphone.
Thank you very much. I was wondering if one of the money you get goes after to other projects that you actually use. How much of it? I don't know, maybe a percentage or just a few examples of money that get back from you to other open source projects.
Do you contribute back to other open source projects with your winnings?
Right now, we're trying to survive, so not yet.
It's a very good question that leads to some introspection. I think Frank talked a lot about free for home users and expensive for enterprises. I think that's a good mix. And so, you know, as a developer who has written a lot of open source and contributed a huge amount, perhaps we do that a little bit less than we should. So I think it's a good challenge. Great question. Look at that. What do you think? Another one. I think we have another maybe minute or two.
Thanks. You touched upon the question of funded features. How do you balance that against maybe a growing backlog of work that then needs to be maintained, which isn't funded?
So in our case, with one of them, it was really something that would benefit the community more broadly and lead to more user acquisition by putting Gris in other languages. And in other cases, sometimes when you are an open core company, you know the version 0 or the version 1 is going to be open source anyway, but then there's things on top, integrations, things that are fancier. So if that's something that I can build on top in the future that could be proprietary, now incentives are really aligning, because I can do the part that was going to be V0 open source anyway, and then down the line when I'm ready, do the proprietary part, but still have that open source part that's important for everyone.
In terms of making sure you can maintain the product as it goes, basically you need to be careful to not sell 100% of your dev force. And it's like you need to, I think we have a target of max 40% or something. So you need people who are actually working on maintenance.
And you could also not sell speed, right? I mean, it could be if 100% of the devs work on this to be done in a month, but I don't have to say a month, right? You can give yourself space and time.
Yeah, the consultancy revenue is always quite tempting, and I think that probably underlies Frank's 100% subscription, because there's always someone that's going to come with money and say, hey, You know that nice feature you want to do, why don't you do it? And before you know, you're in a project management nightmare and the fixed cost, I bid this much, but actually it's now 5 times as much. And consultancy is a very risky game, and I know I've bought out some that have failed. And yeah, it's great to have that discipline, I think. Yeah, and I'm missing it sometimes. Anything else? I think we have another 30 seconds for a quick...
Do any of you have a model like voluntary funding from individuals or companies? Like, I don't want to say donations, but usually we say donations. And do you see in the future companies doing that kind of funding with no strings attached, no need for like an SLA or something like that?
The tip jar, Frank.
So I'm doing open source for 25 years or longer and all kinds of different setups. And the thing is, like the KDE community, for example, or other things I was involved. And there are ways to ask for donations, and there are some examples where money coming in. And maybe if you're really famous and you're doing it right, it pays like for 5 people or 10 people or maybe even 20 people, I don't know. And our goal at Nextcloud is to compete with Microsoft and Google. This does not work with 10 people. So this whole donation thing is maybe fine to fund a hobby project, but if you really want to go against the big guys, this is not the business model. And I tried this many, many times in different setups and it does not scale in my perspective.
Yeah, on our side, one thing that works is we have the foundation as an independent entity, which has its own responsibility and does need to be funded as well. So basically, if people are like, well, I don't need your proprietary product, I can't pay you subscription, whatever, but I want to support you, then we redirect them to the Matrix Foundation, and then they can fund the overlying project as opposed to Element as the company built on top.
And I think we're going to have to call time there. Thank you so much. You've been a very good audience. Brilliant. Thank you again.